Well, hello, my name is Laurie Becvar, and I serve as the CEO of the South Dakota Hall of Fame. Joining me today is, for this legacy interview, is 2014 inductee Judy Olson Duhamel. Judy was inducted into the South Dakota Hall of Fame for her work in improving education in South Dakota. Indeed, her life is a testament to her passion for education, but also to her family. Judy, welcome to this legacy interview. Thank you for taking the time to sit with us and to talk about your life and to share some life lessons for the world.
Thank you even for considering inviting me. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, absolutely. So I have a series of questions.
Yes.
If that's okay.
You bet.
So, I took some time and I went back and listened to your acceptance video from back in 2014. And you gave tribute to your parents. And and you said that you were raised, I love this, in a culture of excellence. So tell us who your parents were and tell us what it was and how they raised you right.
Well, thank you, because I love to talk about my parents. So thank you for the opportunity. My father's name was J. Marvin Reedy, and he was from Yankton, from a family of eight kids, and they were very active and energetic, and I think probably many of them were interesting characters, but they were all dedicated to something else besides themselves. Okay. And all were very, very active. And my mother was from also a family of eight from Hitchcock, South Dakota. And she was part of the younger group, which I'll mention something why that's significant. But her mother came over from Norway on a boat, and she was 2 years old, my grandmother, and she had a beautiful voice, beautiful singing voice. And so there were many who wanted to adopt her. Well, I say that because one of my memories as a child is when I would go to Hitchcock to see my grandmother.
Now, where is Hitchcock?
Hitchcock is close to Huron.
Okay, there.
East River. It's a small town.
Okay.
And my grandfather owned a store called, I think, the Murphy store. And they had everything from peanuts and jelly beans to caskets. And my mother talks about the kids crawling in caskets and waving, and I can see it, so I love it, of course. But her older siblings, her father died when she was 12, and her father was much older than her mother, and that's a whole other thing. But the interesting thing to me is that her older siblings used and depleted really what money was there. She has one of her brothers went to law school with George Mickelson Sr. And that brother and George Mickelson Sr. had a great time in life. And so when I visited with Governor Mickelson, I said, "Did you know my uncle Bob Murphy?" And he said, "Oh, yes." But so when it came time for my mom, who was very, very academic, to want to go to college, there really was no money. So she would work, go a semester, stop, work again, and go a semester.
She was that dedicated to her studies.
But she never finished. And I remember her telling me that when I was quite young, I came running home and said, "Mother, I just learned that college isn't required." Because she was that kind of person. And I grew up with both parents, always loving, but also enforcing daily kindness to others. Do not talk about your friends with any kinds of words. And remember that when you disagree with someone, that person's opinion is valuable also. And never lie, never cheat, all those things. It's just been part of me my whole life.
So that was the culture of excellence.
The
Wow.
culture of excellence, and do everything well.
Yeah. Oh,
Believe me, get good grades. Get good grades. Absolutely.
couldn't slide. Huh?
Never slide. And thus, I was surprised many times I'd end up in some kind of leadership role in high school or whatever. And I think it was because of the social behavior that is kind and caring and not judgmental and listening. Honestly, I think, because I'm certainly not brilliant or anything remarkable, but I think it was that decency. Well, but the decency thing,
very
it
good.
counts.
Yeah. So how we parent our children continues to be paramount in who our children become as adults, Judy. And I consider you an expert. I mean, you raised 6 children of your own with your stepchildren. There are 11 children total. But what advice might you have for parents of today?
I guess I would say, and I offer this advice to my children, who obviously we have, between Bill and me, we have 28 grandchildren.
Wow.
So I think always listening, but also really in a gentle, kind of courteous way, demand excellence. And that's your expectation. My expectation of my kids was to always be kind to friends, to each other. You can imagine that once in a while they might have disagreed with each other.
I can imagine.
Yes.
Yes.
Let me not profess that all things were every moment, sweet and lovely. But no, and then I wanted them, each of them, and I can tell you today that when I look, each does this. I wanted them always to think about what they might do for somebody else. Always put someone else, always be kind, and always think of, what could I do to help? How could I help that person?
Yeah.
What could I do?
That's fabulous advice.
Consequently, each of the 6 has strong motivational skills to care for people. I have 2 kids who are teachers in Rapid City, a wife and my son. I have a counselor in Arizona who was Arizona's Counselor of the Year, and she retired but went back to work because she's concerned about the children. Every single one of them does something, whether it's volunteering above and beyond their jobs, but something that really demonstrates caring for somebody else.
That's deep.
And caring for kids. I care so much about kids.
That's deep. That's great advice, Judy. Yeah. So, Judy, your achievements are so great, from serving on the South Dakota Board of Education, to your service on the National Association for State Boards of Education, to your legislative experience, to your leadership with the Democratic Party. Who or what has been your greatest source of inspiration throughout your journey?
Well, probably first of all, beginning with the standards that are part of me, thanks to my parents. Yeah. But I was always motivated to continue education, and that was due to several people. One woman that I'm so delighted to mention, her name was Irma Becker. She was a counselor that I met one time at junior high school when my kids were there. And at some point, she did parenting classes, and she'd always say, why don't you help me with this class? But I was so interested in anything else I could learn. And she was so kind and such an outstanding counselor and so bright that I always listened to her. So the time came when I was considering, I really wanted to get a master's. And she said, I was thinking about English literature because I love it. And Irma Becker said to me, Judy, you need to get the master's in school administration, because we are lacking in women administrators, number one. And number two, you would be the fit. So I did do that at South Dakota State University, driving out to Ellsworth
Wow.
at night, taking classes. And again, there I am with such a mix of people and teachers that I loved it, and they were a big influence. And then I spent 18 years in school administration with the Rapid City Schools, and somehow I didn't even realize this to one of my bosses. I had 4 superintendent bosses. I was directly employed by them, and said, "Do you realize you're wearing 4 hats, Judy?" And I said, "No." I said, "Well, you're in charge of Adult Basic Ed GED program," which I hardly knew what was until I helped a friend of mine teach in that program at night. I didn't know what a GED was, and that I admit that because my life was different. Well, that was a whole new world of caring and seeing needs of people that I didn't know, and I loved it. I mean, I thought, oh, this is really a place to make a difference. So then I became, that was part of my other job, was doing community education, and that was an opportunity to travel to a lot of businesses and say, okay, we're going to have some night classes, and we're going to get a teacher. Should we teach how to change your oil? Something that
practical,
kind of, right? And ooh, yes, and that was successful, and I could open up. I felt like education to the community, lifelong living, all ages. It's always, so it was fun to create all kinds of classes, from dancing to, how you change your oil, and Spanish and all kinds of things. And then the other, one of the other hats was public relations. And
I bet you were great at that.
Well, I don't know that I was, but it wasn't hard. I could write public service announcements, that kind of stuff. But what that also taught me was the misunderstandings between a community and an education system, the school system. And I thought, oh, we need to bridge that.
Yeah, it needs to be cohesive.
Right. So we did a television program where I would interview the superintendent bright and early in the morning after every board meeting.
Nice.
And then I felt, oh, that's not enough. So I would stay after every board meeting, and I would write an assessment, a summary of what happened at the board meeting, zip it out then by fax to all the teachers, in the schools.
Get everybody on the same page.
So they all knew what happened. So they're a part of it too. So it's not administration's here and, workers are here.
So you were really inspired by that job.
Yes. And then I went and got a degree in school public relations, which was really more difficult than University of Arizona or getting my master's. It was really challenging. And I never I could put some letters after my name.
And where did you get that one?
I ended up taking the final test in, was it DC or New York?
Okay.
That I went to. It was a program of like classes.
Got it.
Not intensive,
Okay.
except you had to do intensive writing, and you had a 4-hour interview.
Okay. Wonderful.
Too. So the Associated School Public Relations was what I could have, but I didn't really, I used it all the time, but I didn't use the title. But my life in the Rapid City School, I also supervised summer school. That was the 4th one.
Oh, that was the 4th one.
Right. And I hired all the teachers and the principal. And I included special needs kids because I wanted some of the older kids, the high school kids, to work with them and write books together and tell stories together. And that was fun. And I did it at Central High School because it was central for everybody to drive. And I had some parents that if they wanted to, they could take a computer class and that kind of stuff.
Wonderful.
So that was
So-
fabulous. I
so
had four
Irma-
wonderful
So
bosses.
source of inspiration, Irma, and then your job.
Yes.
And what about any other mentors who significantly influenced you?
Mentors in terms of that this is one of my favorite stories. When Governor Richard Knipe appointed me to the State Board of Education, I didn't know him. He didn't know me on paper, I guess.
Mhm.
And right away at a meeting, I disagreed with an executive order that he had just proclaimed. The executive order had something to do with vocational education that was disturbing to me. So I'm agonizing. I'm a newbie on this board, and I'm thrilled to be there, and I'm grateful. It's not right to publicly say, well, I disagree with the governor. So I thought the only thing to do is be honest, right? So
Yes.
I went to him. I said, Governor, I'm sorry. I disagree with this part of that executive order, and I never want to criticize publicly. And I'm just a beginner. I'm just new to this board. And he said, Judy, I appointed you to think. You're the educator. You are not under my thumb. And this is what he did.
Isn't that wonderful?
More than wonderful. I live by do what you think is right.
And being honest.
And being honest, both. And that, I never forgot. We became really good friends and family friends. And I still communicate with Nancy.
How wonderful.
But for a governor, that was freeing, and it was, it propelled me to have always the courage to, in whatever the conditions, to tell the truth.
Good for
You
you.
don't have to tell the truth in any nasty way. You can
Oh,
graciously
yeah.
say, I have a different opinion.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Be nice to bring that to the world today.
Funny thing, whenever I tell that story about
Yes.
Dick Knipe,
Yeah.
people say, wow. But that's true.
Mhm.
And that was how he governed, I learned. I didn't know. I had not ever. I didn't do a lot of, in fact, almost not volunteering or any political thing while all of my kids, because my goal was them. And I was fortunate that I could be home. And so I didn't,
How nice. Yeah.
So this is kind of a new world when I'm appointed to this board. I thought, wow, this is so exciting. And I learned so much. And then we traveled all over the state listening to real people in real schools tell real problems.
Good for you. Good for you.
So that was
So any other mentors?
Well, actually, when I chaired the South Dakota Democratic Party for 8 years, traveling all around the state, I would maybe meet with a Republican agriculture person. I know zip about agriculture, and at a gas station somewhere when I could just meet and say, teach me.
Interesting.
I don't know anything, because I felt like I needed to communicate with all people and listen to all people. So that was a thrill. And while I was doing that, I had great counsel from George McGovern.
Okay.
Because I needed counsel. I wanted to build goodwill for the state of South Dakota. And I didn't want to be contrary, and I wanted to listen to all opinions of all people. And at that time, I was working with also 3 congressional people, Dashiell Johnson, and Stephanie was there and George McGovern also really reiterated, do what you think is right. Go ahead, do what you think is right. Because I have problems with two-partisan politics. Whatever the topic or whatever the people or whatever, I really believe we always need to listen to another opinion. And it's
Good advice.
of no value in my mind when one of our candidates, regardless of whether it's a school board or whether it's political or whether it's
Yes.
anything, when our candidate doesn't win, I've learned that it's wrong to just continue to either criticize or, get radical about the fact that instead it's the way it is, and it's another opinion, and it's another leader, and then let's just think about maybe what we can do to make the world better, the community better, or the institution better.
Yeah. Well, two great mentors, Judy. Wow.
Oh,
Two great mentors.
yes, I'm lucky.
So, if there were a young individual who wanted to follow in your footsteps today, what advice would you give him or her?
I would probably begin with check your caring meter, and
It's good.
look at a community, or look at the people with whom you play and with whom you work, and think about how you can help, but listen to all of that. And then, of course, because I'm such an advocate for education, I would say, please take advantage of all educational opportunities. They come in many different kinds of flavors and packages, but take advantage of all of them. And some of them are just working on a board. That certainly is a growing opportunity for all people, isn't it? Yes. And a variety of people and opinions. So, today I have a real concern about the lack of fervor or excitement about education and teaching. And I'm just sick about it.
Many people leaving the teaching profession.
Yes. I want, like I told my kids, I really, like to go into the schools and say, some of you think about this. It's a wonderful profession. You're
Yes.
dealing, and you have no idea the impact you can have just by caring for somebody who doesn't. And I've noticed, I've learned so much from one of my kids who taught 26 years at North, and I've learned so much about kids that haven't had the opportunities certainly I've had, or the support system I've had, or any of that. And yet, if you as a teacher,
they can transcend it with that
yes,
support.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so
I've seen it too.
Oh,
Judy,
I know
I've
you
seen it.
have,
Yeah.
haven't you?
Yeah.
And also, just I think it's such a worthy profession. It's such a worthy profession that I'm so sorry that for many people, and by the way, I understand this,
Yes.
money is
Yes.
a factor.
Yes.
It's
not the highest paid profession.
Good grief, no. And I'm not knocking that need, because frankly, I think if a one income teacher family would be tough.
Yeah.
Tough to make it.
Yeah. So that says something too about what we need to work on.
That to me is,
Yeah.
that's one of my current passions.
Wonderful. Everyone has hard times. Like you said, it's not always roses. So can you share a significant challenge that you have had in your life, Judy, and how you overcame it?
Well, this is probably not going to be that kind of challenge, but at one point when I was working with this national public relations thing, different from, I was invited to go to Japan and study and work with all kinds of educators and government officials for, I think, a 2-week period, maybe even extending. At that time, I was concerned about leaving my kids. And so I went through, in fact, I talked to my mom about it. Do I leave and take this wonderful opportunity, or do I say,
How long were you going to be gone?
2 weeks, which was a long
that's
time.
a long
I didn't
time,
really
yeah.
like to leave.
Yeah, that's a long time.
But what I did, what some counsel said to me, now look, if you have all the care in place, which I would when you leave, for your kids, double, triple, people
Yes.
checking, think of how that will be a growth in your own family and your community.
Mm.
So here's the funny thing about that. I mean, I went, okay, I decided
Yeah.
I must do this. I was at an embassy party in Japan. My name tag said, of course, Judy Olson and Rapid City, South Dakota. And a Japanese gentleman came up and said, "Oh, you're from South Dakota. That's the Midwest." I said, "Yes." He said, we like to do Japanese teacher programs and exchanges, but we always end up doing it on both coasts. It was just easier on the, the East and West Coast. And we'd like to do the Midwest. Would you be willing to help us with a Japanese teacher? What do you say? Yes, of course.
Yes.
I'd be delighted.
Yes.
Oh, I'm the guest of the Japanese who are treating
Yes.
us like royalty, and so we hosted for 3 years.
Okay.
The leader of the Japanese, but also in the Rapid City schools, I thought it would be so awesome when we have these teachers come that they stayed with the family different from the
Okay.
teacher they were assigned in whatever school.
Okay.
So they had 2 experiences, and we had the experience. So I did as many social things as I could pull off, for all of us to know them. And my kids still remember the people that stayed with us.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah.
because
It's pretty meaningful.
meaningful, and we all learn. But I'm so glad I said yes.
Yes.
I agonized over that, and of course I also, like I said, it's never easy to make a decision about a divorce.
Yeah. That would be tough. After 32 years and 6 kids. Wow.
Yes. But I will say, now Bill Duhamel and I have been married for 21 years, and my former husband, Bob Olson, we are all friendly. It was a very decent, kind of communication. So we included him on all birthdays, holidays, because he was alone here. And he and Bill went to school together, talk about weird small world. Back in the day.
Yeah.
But that was a thing. And then,
that's a testament, though, to you, too, that everybody can get along, regardless.
I always wanted
That's good.
that with the kids.
For your children.
And for he and I.
Yeah.
That, we're not at war
Good.
at all.
Good.
But probably the other thing that has been slow in coming and is, screeches a little bit now, and that is the fact I can no longer read. And then the macular degeneration, when it started, it was just mild, and then when I realized I really shouldn't drive, I drove everywhere all the time when I wanted to and where I wanted to go and all that stuff. So that was hard. And then probably within the last year, when I couldn't read my Kindle, I knew that my eyes had taken another dive. So what I want to say is, yes, this is, something to live with, a handicap, but the support systems are incredible. Good. I receive books from the state library. We talk about what authors and what topics I enjoy, and they come on discs. I have my phone audibles. I go to a group once or twice a month where most of the people there are white cane, seeing eye dog blind. Mm-hmm. And I just learn so much from them. And I'm grateful that I am, have some sight. I'm so grateful for everything that I look at each of them. There's no whining. There's no self-pity. They say, well, what are we going to do? Should we go on an excursion? What do you think we should do? Let's do. And it's so fun and it's exhilarating.
Well, good for you. Those are some challenges, yes.
Yeah, it's
and,
challenging,
and
but
wonderful ways to overcome it. That's a great lesson, Judy.
But you know how lucky I am.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so fortunate.
So many of our inductees, we have 792 inductees in the South Dakota Hall of Fame so far. They have shared that education has played such an important role in their success. Now, you graduated from Central High School in Rapid City, and from the University of Arizona. So, how does a Rapid City girl go to the University of Arizona? Tell us that.
That's really a fun story. I had a journalism scholarship to Missouri.
Okay.
And I was debating about Missouri or Drake in Iowa.
Oh, okay.
So I go to my ENT doctor in those days, long gone. And I always had little bronchial, asthma issues. Okay. And I was having one in my mother just happened to go with me that day, because I was old enough to go by myself and did. And he said, okay, Judy, where are you going to college? I said, well, I can't decide anything. It's either, Missouri or, and he goes, you'll be sick all the time you're there.
Oh, no.
You're going to be, your asthma's going to kick up. And my mother is all ears. So on the way home, she said, we're going to look into Arizona. I said, Mother, I won't be sick all the time. No, if you're going to. So thus,
Arizona it was.
She got on it, and I went to the University of Arizona in Tucson. I had never been on, this is the truth, an airplane until I went to college.
Wow.
We were, it was a modest income home
and you flew that I
grew up in.
And you flew to college there.
In a private plane with my friend and someone I had worked for, Buckingham Transportation many years ago, always gave me jobs in the summer. And it was nice. And his daughter, whom I was a friend. That was how I arrived. I had never been there. And we couldn't afford to do what is so cool and happens, these days.
A visit.
You travel with your kids too here and there.
Yeah.
And it's all.
It wasn't like that. Huh?
No. It wasn't. It wasn't like that.
And off you went.
And off I went. Loved it.
And were you homesick?
No, I was not homesick.
No,
I wasn't. And I could only come home at Christmas because it was too expensive. And of course I had to fly. And so I would go with friends somewhere for Thanksgiving and all that kind of stuff. It was a wonderful experience.
So what do you believe is the most important aspect of education for future leaders in our youth?
Right now, I'm going to say a big piece of this is recognizing the value of early education. I am always, that's my challenge, and I work in Rapid City, starting strong and early childhood connections, but selling in a manner and words that business people understand, that if you invest in early education, you are not paying later, likely, maybe prison, certainly maybe not graduate from high school, because if a child enters kindergarten and is uncomfortable, has never had the experiences of being read to or playing with toys, that on and on, or discussions.
Yeah, it matters that much. Huh?
They might as well be taking chemistry in Russia. They shut down.
Yes. We
had no idea, but the research is infallible. And I presented that at certain times to people, and it's more taking on the national front, really.
Okay.
Early childhood, you'll hear so many candidates.
Yes.
And I so want, like I've mentioned several times to friends I hope while I'm still living that I can see early childhood appreciated in the tune of financial support in the state of South Dakota, because it's a money savings. And what what do educated people do to boost a community?
So much.
They care, they
Yeah,
volunteer,
yeah.
they involve.
They invest in it. Yes.
Oh, they
yeah.
invest, and
Yes.
it
It lifts
raises the
all
whole.
boats rise.
Yes, so that is important. But
That is
also,
good. That's profound.
yes,
Yes.
I, that's one of my. Probably I overdo. I talk about
No,
that.
that's
often.
very good.
Well, it's all true. It's research sound,
Mm-hmm.
But also, I wish we could inspire families, all families, to talk about the value of education. That it could be a dinner table topic. It was in my house, and that, and maybe if it's valued, because we want, when we bring people to Rapid City, we want them to look at the schools with pleasure. If you're going to bring a business to Rapid City, say, oh, and I for a while, I think it was during when I was doing my administrative job, I represented the schools with the chamber to talk to possible incoming businesses, etc. And to the person, the question is, tell me about your schools. Do you have a music program? I could answer that one. Do you have an accelerated program? I could answer that. If I couldn't answer, I got back to them. But point is, if they're going to bring a family here, they want to know about the Rapid City schools. They want to know about
Good
the
schools.
quality. They want, yes,
Want good schools.
they want good schools, and of course they do.
Yes.
So that too is a piece,
Mm-hmm.
to me, of selling. Come on, folks, support education. Come on, folks. I mean, I think we are one of 4 states that does no funding of early education at a state level.
Well,
And
maybe,
I'm not saying
maybe sometime in the near future, huh?
I hope.
So it's been 10 years now since you've been inducted into the South Dakota Hall of Fame. And so how does it feel to look back, knowing that you're among South Dakota's greats? And so share a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, I very genuinely don't consider myself one of South Dakota's greats. I consider myself so fortunate that I've had all the experiences I've had. So fortunate. But I've always thought that because the person who nominated me was Stephanie Herseth-Sandlin, that's probably why I was selected, because she is brilliant and remarkable. And
she's also an inductee, yes.
Yes, and doing wonders at Augustana College.
Yes, the president.
And she's been a close friend of mine. But I feel very, very grateful. And today, Laurie, just, being here, like I told you, I was thinking about, oh my gosh, that trip to Japan affected my life. Oh my gosh, these assorted experiences that I've thought about, and I'll never forget, never, the words of Governor Richard Knight.
Yeah.
And I really don't want anybody else to either, because I think when we're working in any group,
yes,
and you certainly know about working with groups,
yes,
we need to listen to, to everybody. So
Judy, is there anything else you would like to share with the world? Any other advice during this legacy interview?
I guess I would hope the world will listen and respect all opinions. It doesn't mean we have to agree. But everybody talks about civility, and I think leadership is so important, as you are one. I really, I hope that as we grow in our state, that we respect listen,
It's beautiful.
and then promise to do something to make things better, each of us, that we give in some way to make this community better. Because it's wonderful. I love living here.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of the Board of Directors, management, and staff of the South Dakota Hall of Fame, thank you, Judy Duhamel, for being a part of our Legacy Interview series. And thank you for being a South Dakota champion. Your advice to the world is heartfelt and so meaningful. And all the best to you and Bill and your family.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.